Before Odysseus could ever see Ithaca again, the sorceress Circe handed him a terrifying condition. He had to descend into the realm of the dead, a place no living man was meant to enter. His men grew pale at the command. No mortal had willingly journeyed into Hades and returned. Yet without the counsel of the dead prophet Tiresias, the path home would remain hidden forever. Following Circe's instructions, they sailed to the edge of the world, to the shores of Oceanus, a land of perpetual mist where the sun never shone. As the ship crossed into this featureless void, the sounds of the living world simply vanished. On these desolate shores, Odysseus had to set aside his instincts as a sailor and soldier. To move forward, he had to follow a strictly prescribed ritual, placing his life entirely in the hands of ancient, otherworldly rules. Odysseus dug a trench in the earth. He poured in honey and milk, then sweet wine, then water, before scattering white barley over. Then came the final, grim requirement. He sacrificed a ram and a black ewe, letting the dark liquid pool in the trench. The air grew cold as the mist began to stir. Pale, translucent figures emerged from the shadows, young, old, warriors and maidens, all drawn irresistibly toward the scent of the blood with an aching hunger. Gripping his sword, Odysseus stood guard over the offering. Despite the moans of the spirits, he refused to let any shade drink until Tiresias arrived, exactly as Circe had warned. He was now a lone man, standing at the threshold of eternity, surrounded by a desperate, starving horde, waiting for a single voice to tell him if he would ever see the sun again. Among the restless shades, Odysseus recognized Elpenor, one of his own crewmen. In the haste to leave Circe's island, Elpenor had fallen to his death and been left behind, his body unburied. The spirit begged for a proper burial, fearing that without the correct rites, he would be forced to wander the gap between worlds forever. Odysseus, moved by the plea, gave his word to return for his comrade. Finally, the spirit of Tiresias appeared. Once he drank from the blood, the prophet's voice returned, carrying the weight of absolute clarity. Tiresias warned that Poseidon's fury still followed them, a direct consequence of Odysseus blinding the Cyclops. The journey ahead would be long, punishing, and filled with hardship. He issued a specific command regarding the island of Thrinacia: touch nothing that belongs to the sun god Helios. If the crew harmed even a single one of the sacred cattle, the ship and its men would be destroyed utterly. Even a successful return would offer no immediate peace. Tiresias spoke of a home overrun by suitors, seeking to steal Odysseus's throne and his wife, Penelope, a threat that would require patient, careful planning to overcome. The prophet's words effectively ended Odysseus's uncertainty. He now held the route home, but he also carried the heavy knowledge of exactly which sacrifices and betrayals were waiting in the mist ahead. As the prophecy ended, Odysseus saw his mother, Nekuia. He hadn't known she was dead. She had passed away from the sheer weight of grief while waiting for him to return from the Trojan War. He attempted 3 times to embrace her, but his arms passed through her spirit as if she were made of smoke. She told him this was the reality of the dead. The body decays, and only a formless spirit remains, forever separated from the world of the living. The legendary Achilles also appeared. Even in death, he remained a figure of immense pride, yet his perspective on glory had changed. Achilles admitted he would rather be the lowest, poorest slave on earth than rule over all the lifeless dead. Hearing this from the greatest of heroes stripped away any remaining illusions. The epic fame Odysseus had sought at Troy appeared hollow when compared to the simple, breathing reality of a slave under the sun. The number of restless souls began to grow. They pressed forward toward the blood with hollow eyes and whispered pleas, their presence becoming an overwhelming weight. Sensing the danger of remaining at the threshold, Odysseus realized he could stay no longer. To linger was to risk being pulled into the darkness itself. He retreated to his ship, and his men rowed with everything they had, pulling away from the misty shores of the dead. He left the underworld with the knowledge needed to survive, but he also carried the burden of prophecy. For the first time, he saw the exact shape of the suffering and loss that still lay between him and his home. Ahead lay the song of the sirens and the deadly strait guarded by Scylla and Charybdis, trials that would test his endurance as much as his cunning. The descent into Hades redefined his mission. Reclaiming a kingdom was now secondary to the desperate, immediate necessity of staying alive, having seen the cold emptiness that waits for everyone at the end of the journey.